isn't she? Can you? She's doing two things up there. She's got a big job. Okay. Our presenters tonight, we have Heather Moore, Adult Services Director. We have Angela Jean, that does our, I thought your job title changed. Maybe it didn't. I don't know. But Employment and Transition Services Manager. And then we have Keith Gabbard, who does our advocacy and provider compliance work. So you'll get to hear those folks talk throughout the course of the night. Okay. First thing I want to talk about is intake and eligibility. And the reason why we put this slide on here, this is an essential function of what all county boards of developmental disabilities do. In order for us to provide care to your loved one, they have to meet eligibility criteria. And so there are some families that are involved in the SALT series that aren't connected with the local county board of DD. And if you're not, then that's kind of the first step. So what I wanted to point out is how the eligibility process works, just very briefly. In Warren County, we administer the same type of eligibility assessment as all other 87 counties. The people that do that, we actually have two ladies that do it, Brenda Alexander and Amy Spencer. They're the first point of contact. So all county boards follow the same guidelines, but in order to administer that assessment, they have to be certified by the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities to administer those assessment results. When it comes to eligibility, there's certain type of milestones that an individual has to achieve as far as along the developmental spectrum. But for this audience, you know, your child is older, so we're primarily looking at folks over the age of 16. So we reestablish eligibility, or all county boards establish eligibility at the age of 16. And so there has to be qualifying diagnosis, and then part of the assessment process is the individual has to have some substantial functional limitations in certain areas. So I won't go into all those details, but I just wanted to point that out, that if this is your first introduction to our county board, Brenda Alexander and Amy Spencer would be the first people that you would contact. And then from there, then services kind of fall in line. Okay? All right, service coordination. I want to talk about service coordination. That's what I primarily do with the county board. We have 24 individuals that are service coordinators. Lack of a better term, they're case managers. What they do is they connect with an individual and determine what supports are needed for that person, and then identify who is going to be involved on that individual's team or circle of support to help them achieve his or her goals. So we have, in Warren County, over 700 children and adults that have service coordination services. We have 24 service coordinators. Our average caseload size is around anywhere from 30 to 35. And when it comes to service coordination, we primarily work with individuals as young as 3, we can, or up to senior citizens. So when it comes to service coordination services, if an individual, and we're going to talk a little bit about Medicaid waivers, so I don't know if the term Medicaid waivers rings a bell to anyone in this room, but regardless of age, you must have a service coordinator if you have a Medicaid waiver in the County Board of DD system, okay? So part of that process is when we work with an individual, we do a series of assessments. We try to determine what the individual's needs may be. And then based upon what they're looking for from us, then we try to connect and facilitate services to meet those needs. And based upon the level of service that an individual has, determines what all we can do. And we'll talk about it a little bit more when it comes to waivers. We write the individual service plans. So if you do not have a service coordinator, that'll be one of the first things that we do. We'll sit down, talk about what you're looking for your son or daughter, ask for the input as well, and then try to put the plan in place that, to the best of our ability, tries to capture what that individual needs at that point in time. Just like anything else, as we experience things or try new things, move out on our own, get a new job, things are going to change with our service plan. That plan should never stay the same. That document's only in place for 365 days. Every year we have to meet and we have to renew that plan. But a primary job of a service coordinator is to be a visible person in the individual's life. And what do I mean by that? If a person has a job in the community, or maybe they live with a couple other guys, or maybe they live in your home. They have to go out and monitor the services that are in the individual service plan to make sure they're meeting needs. And if they're not meeting needs, then why not? We may have to take a look. What we thought we put together 3 months ago is not working. We need to revise that and put something else in place that's going to do a better job. Okay? So, with that, the team is identified by the individual. And the team is who is important to that person and who is best going to support that person to achieve his or her goals. Skip over the Medicaid waiver. The other thing, in regards to service coordination services, we are responsible for manning our crisis line. So if there's an individual that's in a dire situation for whatever reason it may be, and they are, let's say, they are on a job site and they have their job coach come out and work with them, and maybe they slip and fall on the work floor and sustain an injury, that has to be reported. The person on the other end of that line is a service coordinator. Okay, so that's important to know too, and we've provided that 1-800 number there, just in the event that something happens. Hopefully it doesn't, but that's an important component of what we do. There's a lot to what a service coordinator does, and so, again, I don't want to provide too much detail and overwhelm you with all the different tasks that they do, but the main thing to think about is once a person's in the door, and if there's something related to their plan, their individual service plan, the service coordinator is the one that's the author of that plan, that modifies that plan, but works with everybody. So a service coordinator should never be working separately from the team. Now, who makes up the team? Parents. Could be neighbors. Could be the job coach at their work site. Could be their boss at work. Could be their best friend. Could be a teacher. So it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be somebody connected with this agency. It's whoever that person or family member deems important in that person's life, and then would have say and be a part of the planning process and part of the individual service planning process. Okay? And there's my contact information there, my email address and my direct phone number. Okay. And last thing I want to talk about is an overview of home and community-based waivers. Does anyone in this room know what a waiver is? Or heard about a waiver? Familiar with the waiver? Okay. All right. I don't want to get too technical, because the waivers can be very complicated. Okay, but the reason why I'm sharing this is because a lot of families know somewhat about waivers, others know a ton about waivers. So when it comes to what we do, or what a County Board of Developmental Disabilities does, we oversee 4 types of waivers in our system. The individual options waiver and the level 1 waiver are probably the 2 waivers you're most familiar with or you've heard about. Then the other 2 waivers is the self waiver, the self-empowerment life funding waiver, and then transitions developmental disability waiver. Okay? With those different waivers, they do provide different levels of service and different funding. Okay? And so with that, what we do is in Warren County, we administer those waivers that are assigned to our county. And how we get waivers is every year we have a budget planning process to determine how many number of waivers we would like to secure as far as Warren County. When Warren County is, what we choose to do may be different than our surrounding counties. And why is that? Because when it comes to waiver funding can cover a lot of different services. It can cover respite services, a staff member working in someone's home, helping someone find a job, maybe helping modify a bathroom, helping an individual get to work, getting them out into the community to do fun things. With that, for every person that's on a waiver, the county board is responsible for 40% of that cost. And with it being a waiver, it's a Medicaid-based waiver. So what that means is there's a federal component piece. And also, too, in order to be eligible for a waiver, the individual has to meet a certain level of care, have a certain level of need in order to qualify. Then number 2, there is a financial component, but the nice thing about a waiver is it takes a look at just the individual. We have a lot of kids in Warren County that are on waivers. And when you think about Medicaid, it is Medicaid. So you go through the local Job and Family Services office and apply for Medicaid benefits. And I get this question all the time. Families ask, well, how, our income is too great. There's no way my son or daughter will be eligible for a waiver because he's 16 years old and lives with us. When it comes to a Medicaid waiver, it waives mom and dad's income. And it just takes a look at the individual. So that's how children can get on waivers. Okay? So I didn't know if anybody ever asked that question, how is that possible? But that's really the big piece. So when it comes to waivers too, you not only get the services that the waiver can provide, but the individual is also eligible for Medicaid, which is state Medicaid card services. So, if you take a look at, in my opinion, the best waiver, if there is a best waiver, it all depends on what the person needs, would be the individual options waiver. Because it does provide a little bit more, it provides more funding in different array of services. It can provide for funding for people, what they want to do with their work, but also what they want to do in their home. Okay? Now I'm bouncing around, so I apologize. Okay, so we talked about the first bullet, their county-specific wait. Oh, I did not. Warren County has a waiting list for waivers. Okay, so if you're already connected to Warren County, you've been through the intake process for your son or daughter, and he or she does not have a waiver, probably more than likely they are on the waiver waiting list. Because upon intake, that's one of the first things that Brenda Alexander and Amy Spencer do is talk about what the waiver can provide. And so if you're not on if your son or daughter is not on the waiver waiting list, and well, if they're not, then you can either contact Brenda or Amy, or if you have a service coordinator already assigned to your child, you can contact that service coordinator too. Okay? The waiting list is important because it is a long-term, I guess you could say, obligation that we are making to provide services as long as the individual meets that level of care. Okay? So it's really a lifelong, so it's a good thing. The other nice thing about a waiver, if you get an IO waiver and you choose to move to Columbus, Cincinnati, Lima, wherever it is in the state of Ohio, that waiver will follow. So it's not landlocked into Warren County because it's a state waiver. However, if you do move out of state, then that waiver stays in the state of Ohio. Okay? And then if a waiver is assigned and your child does not have a service coordinator, you be assigned a service coordinator. He or she would come out to meet with you and begin the waiver enrollment process, but also start the individual service plan process. And the other thing too, when I talked about the number of waivers, I guess I didn't get that one, I apologize. When it comes to the number of waivers that Warren County asks for each year, we do take a look at our budget. So, because it's a lifelong service that individuals can have as long as they meet that level of care, we have to make sure that we can sustain that cost. So we may choose to go after 20 waivers this year and maybe 15 waivers next year. Each year it's determined by part of the planning process of our financial situation of the agency. Okay. Any questions for me? Because my piece is kind of wrapped up, and I threw a lot at you guys. I didn't want to do that, and I did it. Yes, ma'am.
What about, you said you're referencing the individuals that are on a waiver and it looks just at that individual's income. So we are here because they're transitioning into adults. So is there a stipulation on how much income they can have once they are hopefully transitioned into some type of adult employment?
Very good question. The answer to that is yes. There are income limitations because it is a Medicaid service, so the individual still has to have a certain number of assets or liquid resources that fall within Medicaid eligibility. The other thing, and not to get too technical, but we have a lot of families or grandparents that have set money aside, doing the right thing, and then they get this great thing called an individual options waiver. Then they find out all this money that they've set aside is an asset, and it puts the individual over the income resources for Medicaid eligibility. We've had that happen. But the good thing about that is there are resources out there. There are attorneys, there's trust specialists in this area that are experts on it, and we can provide that to any family that's planning on doing it. Because we have that a lot. Grandparents set aside money, and sometimes mom and dads don't know that, And then when we go, the mom and dad goes down to the Job and Family Services office, and, you know, that's a process, my goodness. You have to provide all this collateral, all this information. Well, then a caseworker at Job and Family Services finds out that, oh my gosh, someone has a $20,000, you know, mutual fund in there.
Sure.
And so then if that ever happens, then we can connect that family with a resource that can help them set up a Medicaid buyback trust.
All right.
So, yes.
Okay, Medicaid buyback trust, you just hit something else. Medicaid payback. I've just recently heard of a family who is, gosh, in their 70s. They had to refinance their house because they had to pay back Medicaid for their daughter who has not lived with them in many, many, many years. Is there ever a chance that we might have to pay back Medicaid or anything like that?
The only time that would be a problem, I'm hesitant to answer that question because the reason why is Warren County Job and Family Services determines Medicaid eligibility. What the DD system does determines if a person meets a level of care based upon their needs for the waiver.
Right.
So that could happen. However, part of that process through Medicaid eligibility is probably that may be, there was money tucked away in a mason jar somewhere in the backyard kind of thing.
I don't know all the details, yeah.
It could be something like that, because I know that they're pretty thorough. And when a family goes in to apply, they'll talk about that, like any type of assets. Now, there's certain assets that an individual can have and still be eligible for Medicaid, a home being one of them. Okay? Because Medicaid looks at people need to have a place to live, a car. There's certain things that can be considered not a detrimental type asset because it's a need to live. And that would be a question that your Job and Family Services could offer, or any of these folks that are experts in establishing Medicaid trusts.
Our son is adopted, so we have an adoption subsidy. I don't know if they consider that as like part of a waiver. He has like an insurance card, so we're trying to figure out how that's gonna play into that, because we're only supposed to get the adoption subsidy until September this year. And, we said if he was disabled, we would be able to extend it. So I'm just wondering if this is all that was graduates and how they're gonna get
Yeah.
this all. That's over as well. You're in that boat as well. Is he graduating this year?
That would probably be a benefit very similar to Social Security, supplemental security income, or Social Security disability. So it might be looked at in that way. That I think the only problem that may come into that is if the money set aside for the adoption fund is put in a bank account and it grows too high. That's where it could become a place. We have a lot of individuals that receive supplemental security income benefits, and it may be a check for $600 a month, which is fine. It's only when that money gets set aside, when it starts to grow and sitting in a bank. Like if it's in a bank, well, that's what I mean. You're right. But if in theory, if it was put into a bank account and slowly over time it built up, and it was over the resource guidelines, that would be an issue.
So he's getting that if we're getting an adoption subsidy for him, then he would then also qualify for a waiver? And I don't understand why somebody would get a waiver when they're 16 versus 18 or 10 versus 22.
Good question.
You know, why would you go at that age and that time? Like, why would I go do it now and he's 18?
Do you put on a waiver wait list?
Yeah.
Okay, good
And
question.
why did somebody do it at 3 years old?
Because the waiting list in Warren County is several hundred people deep. And so the earlier you're put on the waiting list, the better off you are. We have some families that have been on the waiting list for an extended period of time.
What is this, in your 10 years?
10, 12.
Let's see, 9 years at this point.
Yeah.
You guys
13.
have been on it for 9 years?
Yes, which is not uncommon. So that's why it's very important when you put on the waiting list early on.
So what's the difference between the Medicaid he's on right now?
Okay. The way I kind of the way I describe a waiver is it's almost like different levels of certain, the best way, like insurance. You know, you may have bare bones minimum insurance. Think of that as your Medicaid card, but then you have maybe platinum coverage based upon you have certain needs. The waiver can provide additional services that a straight Medicaid card can't. So, and the other thing too is meaning that level of care, meaning that the individual's needs are great enough to qualify for that waiver because they provide extra services beyond just a state Medicaid card. So I'm sorry, so the adoption, so it's separate issues.
So why is he on it for so long then? I mean, is it like you just get behind, it's not like his needs are maybe not as great as somebody else's?
Based on need.
It's
based
the
on
waiting
needs.
list.
So if your person is not terribly handicapped or disabled, they might be on the list longer than somebody that's extremely handicapped or disabled?
That is correct. There are priority groups. The priority groups and those are determined by, we all have to operate under the state rules and regs about waiting lists. The priority groups for waivers are based upon need. So for example, if there's an individual that has intensive medical or behavioral needs, they're given a higher priority group, regardless of age. If they live with an aging caregiver, and an aging caregiver is a parent or loved one that's 60 years of age or older, they're given a higher priority status. So there's different priority groups that an individual falls within based upon their needs. So yes, so that's, I mean, if your child is not on the waiting list, and maybe they are, but if not, I would definitely make a phone call, because that's important. Okay. And sometimes families don't think they are, but they are. And if you do not have a service coordinator for your child, you might get an annual letter from Katrina Steele. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, we've only been here 4 years.
Okay. Were you in another county? In Ohio? Okay. Well, if your child is placed on the waiver waiting list in Montgomery County, we will honor that date, because we're required to. Is that
How do
what?
we find out? Just go through her?
You could contact Montgomery County's intake department, and they would have that. How long have you been here in Warren County? Sorry, 4 years? Yeah, I make that phone call. Because if Katrina Steele, if that name doesn't ring a bell, yeah. So the good thing is if you're on that waiting list in Montgomery County, we have to honor that date in Warren County. Yes.
If your child has an Iowa waiver, do you still file for Social Security when they graduate from high school? Or, I mean, that might be a Social Security question, but, and just FYI, my child was on the list for 9 years before the Iowa waiver came through, and that was the first thing we got. So, but nobody, I wish we would have done this like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Because I would have understood what was happening. But I know we have a Social Security meeting coming up here sometime soon, but I was just kind of wondering, if you have an Iowa waiver, do you still do that, or is that instead of?
It doesn't hurt, especially, you know, and the reason why I say it's important is if your child ever moves out into, like, wants to live with 2 other folks, that Social Security benefit is very important because that helps pay for some of their living expenses. So yeah, that's a good question, but yeah, your local Social Security office can't go wrong calling them either. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Angela Dean, and then again, at the end, we'll have a Q&A at the end. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Angela. I'm the Employment and Transition Services Manager here at Warren County. I've been here about 2 years. I'm still pretty new in my position. And I'm just going to give you a brief overview of what the transition department does, because everything is going to, once you get deeper, it's going to be specific to your child. Basically, we provide a number of services that assist students ages 14 to 22 as they transition from schooling in the school system into the adult world. We, I'm all over this. We have a program called Bridges. You might be, I don't know if you have any students already involved with Bridges, but that's a partnership between Warren County Board of DD and the state state agency Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities, or formerly known as DVR. So what we do is we help the students develop, once you're enrolled in the Bridges program, we will help the students develop their path to employment. So there's a number of services we can help provide based on what their needs are at that time, how to get them from where they are into employment once they exit high school. We also have some services for kids that may be not ready for that program yet, so we are in the process of developing some things, but we do have a class, a community living skills class that we're starting that will focus on hygiene, social skills, there'll be a vocational component, so we'll prepare the kids to move on to that next step, which would be more of developing their career path. We have a wonderful staff, a transition staff that has worked with transitional age youth for many years. 2 of them are over here right now, so if you brought your child, they're in that class. And they provide jobs class, they provide job coaching. There's lots of work experiences that the students can access. So in a nutshell, that is what we do in the transition department. Does anyone have any questions?
How did you get enrolled in the Bridges program, or what do you have to do?
So to get enrolled in the Bridges program, you have to be eligible for Warren County Board Services. And then it's as simple as you could give me a call, we have a referral form. A lot of times the teachers will fill it out on behalf of the student. The student will then be assigned a transition coordinator. Sometimes we find that they may not be ready for that program. If they're not, the coordinator will recommend other programs to access prior to that. If they are ready, they'll go through another eligibility process that is a state requirement. And then they just keep going. They start building their path to employment after that.
So are you all related to the Ohio Ability First program?
For solutions program.
You
No,
went through a program through the transition in high school. First I did, when you went out and did some job shadowing, and they assessed it, the mentor assessed it.
So you're not related to that?
we're not related to that. Do you know if he had a vocational counselor?
No.
No?
What she did was a mentor that wanted him to work with him at work. Try to see if he was ready. So she felt like he needed some help. So we were wondering if we could raise something like that. So you would be in addition to that.
We would be in addition to, or it would be, the coordinators would do an intake with you and kind of assess your need and see what the best options would be at that time.
So the report we got from that mentor probably also assessed it.
Absolutely. Next up is Heather Moore.
Hi, I'm Heather Moore. I'm the Adult Services Director here at Warren County Board of PD. Angela and I work very closely. So there's a lot of opportunities out there with adult services. I'm specifically the Director of Warren County Board of Developmental Disabilities Adult Services Program. So there's also private providers out there, which, like you mentioned, Abilities First, Goodwill, there's all kinds of different folks out there that do similar programs to us. We may not do all of the same programs as all of those providers, but there's options out there, and that was the one thing that I wanted to mention with this slide is I'm here, I'm representing Warren County Board of DD, but more than anything, I just wanted to give you an idea of the services that are out there. So if you hear some of these buzzwords, you know what people are talking about if you're not familiar with the services. We have them here, but there's other options in addition to us, and we just really want to make sure that you know that we're here and that there's other adult service programs out there as well. And we're all about, you would work with your service coordinator and take a look at all the different programs out there and see what's best for you and your family member. Okay, so this is just kind of a general categorization of the types of adult services programs that are available. So you would probably hear them called adult day services. And one type of program is the habilitation program. And this type of program focuses on reinforcing skills, building on educational skills, and encourages increased participation in activities of daily living. A lot of personal hygiene, maybe assisting with mealtime, maybe someone needs assistance with restroom activities, communication, all those sorts of things. Alternate activities such as academics, sensory stimulation, self-awareness, and independence and community exploration are also an integral part of rehabilitation programming. These programs support and build upon current skills, but then we also look to build those skills while addressing medical needs, behavioral supports, use of training on adaptive equipment, all those sorts of things. The rehabilitation programs also coordinate with team members to incorporate therapy services. So if your family member is working with maybe an occupational therapist, we're going to work with that person. They'll be a part of the team, and we'll have goals that we're going to incorporate into our programming during the day and work on those things as well and carry those things over in both environments. So we'll work those into the daily programming activities. So for example, I can give you examples of our program here. In our rehabilitation program, we do a lot of volunteer activities. We do a lot of community integration activities. We may go to the YMCA. Sometimes we go to the Reds games. But we're working on things while we're doing that, like maybe we're working on money skills at the Reds games. We've got to pay for our tickets, we've got to arrange our transportation, all those sorts of things. There may be a cooking class. So at the cooking class, we might be looking at nutrition, what good nutrition does for you, and then we may cook something. We may take a trip to the grocery store and purchase those items. We may work on actual cooking skills and put that all together into programming for the week. Sometimes there's themes. We really work with all the people in the groups and figure out what their interests are, and then we incorporate their skills and their goals into the daily programming. So, like I said, all of these that I'm going to go through here, we have these programs at Warren County Board of DD, but then we also have private providers that provide a lot of these services as well. Each independent provider doesn't necessarily offer all of these options, but there's other providers that offer each one of these options if you would find that that's better for your particular family member. We also have vocational, we call it vocab. If you hear DAHAB, that's what the first category is. I think a lot of times we get into our acronyms and just shortening things, but if you hear the term DAHAB, that's usually what that is, rehabilitation program. And then vocational rehabilitation programs, which you'll hear as vocab. So the vocab programs focus on vocational training. Vocational programs provide instruction and training for a variety of vocational activities. These programs reinforce current skills and build upon them to acquire new and additional vocational skills with an ultimate goal of increased employability. So for example, we have the Work Center, which is just down the street on Columbus Avenue. We have a lot of different contract work there. Some is paid piece rate, some is paid at minimum wage rate. It really depends on the job. We have a lot of different types of work. We are focusing on the work, but we are also focusing on soft skills, how you interact with your supervisors, how you interact with your coworkers, building stamina. Some of the jobs you're required to stand all day long. It really depends on what your goals are, what your interests are, and then we create specific goals for you along with your team in order to help you be more successful and employable in the future. Like I said, we have PSU down the street, but there's other ones such as Goodwill. Tony can help you a lot more with other providers, but there's lots of them out there.
And not just limited to Warren County, too.
Right, that's true too. Then we have supported employment. You may have heard of enclaves before. We do a lot of work with enclaves, which is where they're community-based ongoing training that allows individuals to be independent with their job skills, but offers staffing for necessary support. So for example, we have an enclave at Mitsubishi, where we have 8 individuals on a daily basis who work on the production floor at Mitsubishi, and we have a staff member there as well. So these folks, they generally do pretty well out in the, at Mitsubishi. They don't necessarily need a lot of support, but they're not quite ready to be on their own on the job site. So we have a few different enclaves. We have Hudamaki, which is another manufacturing type place. We have several of them. We have janitorial locations, just a lot of different types of jobs. But the point is, with supported employment, it's typically a small group of folks that's integrated into a community work site, and there is staff support at that location. And the idea is that for folks who go into the enclaves, that it's not meant to be a long-term placement. It's meant to be a job where, and actually all of our enclaves get, people who work there get paid minimum wage. But the thought is that it's a training ground to get you ready for that next step. So hopefully we can point you in the right direction, or put you in some sort of situation where you're gaining skills that are going to help you for your ultimate employment goal. And after a short amount of time, then you won't need that staff support there any longer. The individuals will be comfortable and able to do that on their own.
So then would you stay in that position, or is that something that you would go on and get another position, another job? And is it like a year or 5 years or 6
Right
months?
now, there's not a specific, well, with us, with Warren County Board of DD, in the enclaves that we have, there's not a specific time limit. We actually have talked about that because they're very popular, and it is a very good training ground. And sometimes folks get into the enclaves and they just want to stay there, even though they have a lot more potential. And that does cause problems because we have other people who need to have those training opportunities so they can move on as well. Right now, what we do is we just really look at each individual and see what's going to be best for you. So we start with the idea that it's not going to be long-term, but we don't necessarily say you're here 6 months and then you have to leave. We have program coordinators who work with the service coordinators. They work with the families, and they kind of help guide you with your programming within adult services. And they really work closely with the individual and their teams to determine what's the most appropriate match as far as work opportunities go, which enclaves would be best. And sometimes it's a matter of, just like all of us, you have to take what job is open at the time, and then there may be one you think, I really want clerical, but Mitsubishi's open right now. So I'm going to go work at Mitsubishi, but my dream job is clerical work, so when that one comes open, I'm going to go work over there, and then I'll work towards community employment. So it really depends on the individual. But the point is, it's not meant to be long-term. So we don't necessarily kick anybody out, but we do work very hard to make sure we continue to move through the process and get you to your ultimate goal, which is hopefully community employment. Does that answer your question? All right, so the next category is community employment. And we're just going to give you the little ditty up there, which says, we assist individuals to be competitively placed in companies as an employee of the organization. Job coaching assists with one-on-one training and helps build natural supports within the company. Follow-on services may be provided as well. So that is in adult services, that is ultimately our goal for everyone that we serve. We fully understand that there are some folks who it may take longer to get there. We work with everybody on an individual basis, but that is our ultimate goal, is community employment. So I'll let Angela is actually the supervisor of that program along with transition. So did you want to add anything about job development, like kind of what job development is and job coaching and follow along?
So we do start with employment development, so the individual has somebody that's there to assist them through the process of obtaining a job. We assist with developing the resume, contacting employers, teaching interviewing skills maintain employment, we hook them up with a job coach who's going to go on the site with them and train them one-on-one. Employers really like that because they know that the individual is going to be trained up to their expectations, and then we slowly exit out of there. Once they're fully trained, we bring in a follow-along program coordinator.
Let's see, that's hard. They told me 7 o'clock, not 6.
That's all right.
I'm sorry.
The follow-along program coordinator is somebody who's going to be there for long-term support. So we're not just ending coaching and then backing out. If the person is open to the follow-along, we're going to touch base at least monthly. We're going to touch base with the individual as well as their employer, which is really a good thing. You're always having that support. And then if the individual gets new job duties, if they are ever having issues on the job, the employer typically will just give us a call and ask that we come and provide some more coaching. So there's a really supportive network that we're helping build around that is long-term.
Do you have any questions?
All right, hello everybody, I'm Keith Gabbard. I work with our self-advocates here within the county. The name of our self-advocacy group is Voices Speaking Out. And basically, this is a group that pushes our individuals that want their own independence. It's primarily made up of individuals who are already their own guardian, in the process of becoming their own guardian, or look to be their own guardian in the future. What our group is all about is basically we're teaching the individuals that they have a voice. They have to use their voice. We help them develop skills for speaking up for themselves, whether that be in their ISP meetings. Now that we're going towards the person-centered planning, we want them to tell their service coordinators what their goals are. Speak up for what kind of skills you want to learn to develop, what kind of future you want to have, and not have a dictator for them. We want to we make them, or teach them how to speak up for and ask what their needs will be. What kind of stuff do you want? Whether it's recreational activities, whether it's stuff at their job. Our main goal is to teach them that it's okay to speak up. It's okay to have a voice. It's okay to be independent. You don't have to depend on everybody, because ultimately we all want our own independence. We teach them that at work. We have individuals in our group who have spoken up at work and asked that they get more responsibilities, and they've been received with, now they're up for promotions. And that's working in the community at jobs like Wendy's, Great Wolf Lodge. They work at nursing homes and other things throughout the community, so it's big on community integration. Another thing we want to do, another big thing that we hit on, is that the fact that they know their rights and their responsibilities. They have the same rights as everybody else does, and we want to make sure they know that. Another big thing is, when they're out there, if they're living on their own, and they're working to work with providers and all that kind of stuff, that they need to understand that the provider doesn't dictate what they do. The provider actually works for them. So we want to make sure they know they're not going to go out there in the world and get bossed around. Don't, like anybody else, if you do anything else that you do in your life, if you want to speak up for yourself, there's a right and wrong way to do it. And we teach them the right way to do it. Whether it's chain of command at work, whether it's asking politely for something when you're in the community or with your friends, or even with your provider, if you want to do something, you ask them to do it and you don't demand things. A big thing we're trying to do also is remove the word "I can't" from their vocabulary. That's a big step that we're striving towards now, and we're looking at it. Anytime someone says it, we kind of make them rewind. When we're in our meetings, we start our meeting by going around the table and asking everybody how they spoke up for themselves lately, or how they spoke up for someone else. At these meetings, we do it once a month. And our program's only been around for just over a year, but we really hit the ground running here at the county, which has been great, because you can just tell, you can see it in our individuals. When we first started having these meetings, it's how you spoke up for yourself. It's everybody kind of quiet, withdrawn, don't really want to talk, and now everybody's got their hand in the air. Everybody wants to know how, when they were working at a day half program, and then they want a little bit more work, they ask their supervisor for more work, and now they get more work. Whether it's, like I mentioned before, they want more responsibilities in the community employment. They push for more opportunities, and now they're getting raises. So it's given them a lot more, I guess, self-worth, and they've really flourished in this environment. Next slide. One of the big things we do, it's kind of what our cornerstone is, and it's our curriculum. It's called Project STIR. The STIR stands for Steps Towards Independence and Responsibility. We have probably, I'd say right now, between 20 and 25 members in our advocacy group. And right now we have 6 that are certified trainers for Project STIR. This is a big deal. This is a big 4-day conference. We go up in Columbus. It's different role play activities. It's meeting people from other counties. It's really giving them a chance to assert their own ideas. The plan is to keep moving forward with the Project STIR stuff. We've got another training coming up in January. We're going to get some more people certified. This is a big state initiative. And our guys come back here and they trained our board members on Project STIR. They train other individuals in our advocacy group on Project STIR. And it's really worked wonders in their lives. You can see it. Like, we've had people that started day halves and they were really kind of withdrawn and reserved and shy. We got them out in the community volunteering a little bit. And then before I know it, now the one individual, she's working at Procter & Gamble. And she just got an award the other day, for a service award. And she is just on cloud 9. She's living on her own now, moved out with her parents because she spoke up. That's what she wanted. And now she's getting what she wants in life. Another thing we do, we attend a lot of conferences. One of them just happened this October. It's called the Synergy Conference, also in Columbus. Basically there, it's a bunch of speakers come in and they give the individuals updates, what's going on statewide with other advocacy groups or legislation. They get other advocates speak on how they've spoken up and how they're successful. And it's a good time for them out there. There's a big dance. They get to have, there's a one evening they do the dating game where you get a chance to win a date with somebody. So I mean, it's an awesome experience that we really love taking our individuals to. And we also like to do things on DD Awareness Day. We take a group of our advocates up to the State House. They hear some speakers there, but the cool part is they also get to sit down with some state representatives. It's a small room. It's like 8-on-1 interaction. They get to ask their questions on what their problems are with the system, what things they want to be changed, and they get that good interaction. So it's all pushing towards them getting their voice, and now they're seeing their voices being heard. Recently, a group of our individuals went to leadership of Warren County. They asked us there because they were talking about diversity in the workplace. And they wanted to know some of the struggles they went through and all that. And one of the big issues that came up was transportation issues, getting from home to work and doing stuff out in the community. And it was so well received that there's actually a statewide transit study that's taking place at the end of the month in Lebanon. And they invited 2 or 3 of our advocates to come and talk to that because they liked what they had to say. And they really want these problems resolved. And our advocates are the ones on the front line getting it done. So. Some of the individual accomplishments to kind of brag on some people in our group a little bit. We have a young woman who always thought she was afraid of the water, was afraid to get in the water, and then finally she stepped up, asked to get in the water, and now she's on the Special Olympic swim team. They call her the sea turtle because her specialty is the backstroke. She got 3rd a couple weeks ago, and now she's qualified for the state games. So she's going to go up to Columbus in a couple months and try to get involved and try to qualify for the state games. So that's really cool. We got a bunch of people in the community, like I said, that are getting promotions. I mean, they're getting jobs at P&G. I mean, that's big time. I mean, going from sitting in a day had afraid to speak up, now you're working at P&G and getting awards, being recognized. She's not shy anymore. I mean, she was the first one to come up and start a conversation with a stranger. And that's something she never would have done probably 8 months ago. Our major plans for the future with the group, we're going to continue the Project STIR curriculum. I mean, we've seen success, and It's a huge statewide initiative, and our guys love it, and it's working out, so why stop it? But now we're going to also start working on service projects. Just another way to get our group out in the community, because unfortunately, not everybody in our group has the opportunity to work in the community. So we're going to try to get there and volunteer. They want integration. That's what they want. You can tell when you ask them questions, that's what they want to do. They want to be out in the community. They want to talk to people. They don't want to be behind the walls anymore. So we're going to start really pushing for that. I guess next slide. Another thing we offer here at the county is that we have recreation services. We do things like rec night, and this is these are events for a lot of transition age individuals. Whether there's a place called Miracle Field out in Springboro. We'll go out there and they'll do scavenger hunts. Like this recently, they had one where you split the two teams. Everybody was dressed up like a different superhero. And you went two teams at scavenger hunts, other little arts and crafts, like little silly games. It's something just to give them a chance to get out with their friends outside of work and those kind of environments, just have a good time. We had movie night here where we show a scary movie because it's around Halloween. Got the Halloween dance coming up this Friday where everybody gets to dress up. It's a thriller theme this year, so they're all pretty excited about that. Everything, cornhole tournaments, ice cream socials, they got. They play floor hockey at the Y. We're really, and anymore, like I was talking to an individual there at a meeting, they were playing floor hockey, and now just people at the Y are starting to congregate around and watch them all play floor hockey. And they love it. They feel like, now they're on the stage, and they're actually eating it up, which is great. We have another thing called Job Club, which is mainly for individuals who are in community employment because they're not in the facilities around their friends a lot. So we try to orchestrate these events where they can come and kind of hang out with their friends. Whether we go to, we'll meet at PSU, the product service place, and then we'll go to like Eli's, and then they'll go play Laser Crazy. Just something to get them out there, get them with their friends, let them have a good time. And then also the Special Olympics, like I mentioned, they do practices at the Y, and there's also a bowling team that bowls at Mason Bowl that are working to get towards the state games. So, any questions?
Is this for 22 and up?
The Job Club, there's really, the only age requirement that I found is 14 and up. But there's some events that are geared towards a little more older. Like a lot of the Job Club stuff is mainly community employment. They do other stuff. Where Job Club went to the scavenger hunt too. So there's lots of where they integrate with all ages. But a lot of the stuff is 14 and up.
Okay.
How do you get involved in this program?
And this program, if you're
Or into the self-advocacy?
the advocacy group, once you're receiving services from the county, and advocacy, like I said, that's mainly probably, there's really no age requirement on it, but it's more, I think, geared towards probably 18 and up, because it's people that are looking to be more independent. When I was 14, I couldn't be independent anyway, so. So it's more towards people that are trying to gain their independence. So anybody 18 that's receiving services, more the merrier. We want this group to grow. So.
Do we email you to get on the list of to get information?
You can email me, and I can send you guys a meeting schedule about when we meet. Like I said, we meet once a month. We meet at 2 o'clock during the day for some of the individuals that work at PSU. It's just convenient for them to meet there. And then we have a meeting that night at 5 o'clock here.
Okay.
So we meet with 2 meetings once a month. And like I said, there we kind of just talk about, upcoming events. What do you guys want to do? We kind of do we'll do role play activities. We'll, have you spoken up for yourself. It's just a chance for them to socialize together. And just get to know a lot of people. And it's great because the range is, we got everybody in there. There's a 20-year-old in there, and I got a guy in there that's 62 years old. So, it is a wide variety of people. So, and they all get along. And you can kind of tell the older individuals start getting that big brother mentality where they start saying, well, why aren't you sticking up for yourself? Well, you need to do this. Don't forget you have these rights. And it's like, it's a good thing. It's a really good thing. Any other questions?
As far as the meetings, parents bring them?
Parents, providers, it's stuff that they'd have to get their transportation into the meetings. That's why we do 1 and 2 at PSU if it's afternoon's better.
Do we stay and listen to?
Oh, you're more welcome to stay.
Okay.
We have a lot of people drop them off, But it's an hour, the meeting's roughly an hour long. We usually maybe go an hour and a half at the most. So it's a meeting an hour, so sometimes they drop them off, or sometimes, I mean, they're more welcome to come in and stay.
Okay, all right, thanks.
What did STIR stand for again?
Steps towards independence and responsibility. Anything else? Okay. No?
I can add one thing with the recreation. There are lots more activities than those listed. And Rhonda would be the person to contact. So there are for adults, there are some targets specifically for folks who are transition age, but that's just a touch
Oh,
of
yeah,
the
it's
things
just-
that
yeah.
we do. So you can get on an email list, a mailing list if you contact her.
Okay, great.
That kind of wraps up what we wanted to share with you briefly about our different services. One thing I do want to point out in your PowerPoint, there is contact information. Should have email addresses and then phone numbers too for all of us, and then also some other folks that are in the agency that can assist. So anything that you can share with us as far as if we do this again, I mean, that might be more of an evaluation thing, how we can improve it. We would like your comments on that, maybe on the form. This is our first go around. We'll probably be doing more of this, so we hope that we can at least give you some good information, or at least something to think about. It can be overwhelming, obviously, what we talked about tonight.
So, if we're not currently involved with you guys, how do we start? Who do we contact?
Okay. If you're not currently involved with services, you go to our intake and eligibility department, which would be Brenda Alexander and Amy Spencer. I think that's the third slide in your handout. And does everyone have a handout, this PowerPoint? Okay, if you do not, they're all around back, and then there's a sign-in sheet too.
So you just notify them that we're interested in, what do we tell them what we're interested in doing?
Well, if your child is not enrolled in services, then that would be the process
We want
to.
to get enrolled in services.
Correct. Correct. Do the enrollment process. And then, Angie, if you could advance. Here are future SALT series trainings that will be held in this building, unless subject to change, but these are pretty much, I think, locked in. So we will, just real quick, the same thing is going on in Montgomery and Greene counties. And when it comes to like navigating the Social Security, we will actually bring in an expert to talk about Social Security and the benefits of that. And then also to benefits analysis. There's a lot of questions about, if my child has a job, what benefits can they maintain? So benefits analysis is very important because we don't want necessarily folks to lose benefits, but we encourage people to work. So there's experts that can talk about that. Guardianship is probably a big topic for some of you in this room. Is guardianship important? For some of you, it may be for your son or daughter. Others, it may not be. So, and then also in April and May, there's going to be future topics to be determined on what is needed. So if you could, on your input forms, if there's anything that you would like us to cover or bring people in, we can do that. Mark?
April is going to be OOB or BBR.
Yeah.
So that'll be in April.
April's going to be what?
Pardon?
April's going to be what?
BBR, it's the agency that helps people get connected to employment.
It's opportunities for Ohio B, just in the way.
So it's an employment program.
A resource out there to help folks find jobs. And then I guess May is to be determined as well, too.
Real quick, could you explain a little bit more about the individual service plan? What does that encompass? You said it was just a plan. Does it everything, or what does
It is a comprehensive plan.
Uh-huh.
It covers all facets of the individual's life that's important to them, maybe related to their job, their day habilitation needs, their vocational needs, services they receive at home, any particular goals that they would like to work on to become more independent, or how they need services and supports. It could be others involved in their life that provide care to them, and then specifically, what does that care involve? What does that mean?
Okay.
So it's very detailed, it's very individual specific, and so somebody's plan is going, everybody's plan should look different because it's based upon what I need.
Okay, but there's guidelines that
Correct.
you
Right.
go through.
And the person that facilitates that is is a service coordinator. And there's a series of assessments and questions that they ask and things of that nature, and then anything that you share that may be important for us to know can go in the plan too.
You keep referring to the service coordinator. Is that the same thing as the service and support administrator?
Correct. I think each county in our area
Calls it something.
calls it something a little bit different. And the next slide is just some of our division directors, in case you have any questions for them, or we have obviously our superintendent, Maggie Manuel, our assistant superintendent, Bill Kaplinger, Michelle Swearingen, our business services director, Pete Mason, operations, Christmas support services, and Asian Panya, who's so kind up there to take care of us tonight, keep us on track. She's our public relations manager.
My son is 13, and it seems like most of these services are for 14 and up. Is there anything I can do with that as, like, grading list for some services?
Well, primarily the SALT series is geared towards the transitional age, and 14 and up is typically, the target audience. But I think it's good for you to be here so you can do some planning for what may be out there, because I think a lot of times there may be a lot of information out there that folks may not be clear of. So part of this is to pull people in to kind of give them that information. If your child has a need for a service coordinator can be assigned to help facilitate some processes. So I guess it all depends. We talked briefly at the beginning about the Medicaid waivers and ensuring that, folks are on the waiting list at an early age. So hopefully that's already been taken care of. So that's kind of some futures planning. And if not, then if not connected with our agency just yet, our intake and eligibility folks would be point of contact.
Okay, so you would contact the board of DD that qualified person for service coordinator will be assigned to you.
Correct. Correct. And folks, and students don't, and I refer to students in this age group, don't necessarily need a service coordinator if they don't have an ongoing need. If a person's on a waiver, you have to have a service coordinator. But sometimes families don't have that. So.
Just some feedback. I think the SALT series is fantastic. We've really needed something like this for a long time. But for Warren County, no offense, but I think that you guys could find a better way to get information to us. Because like all these great things you're talking about, I've never heard about. My son's 18. I'd love for him to get involved in some things, but now I have some addresses and I can kind of do it, but it seems like our coordinators, when our kids hit a certain age, they should push this information at us.
That's good to know.
I mean, I used to live in Lebanon. I'm up in Montgomery County, and we have IoT meetings and ER meetings, and it seems like key coordinators don't know. Like when I ask what happens after kids out of school, and there are more services, and they don't seem to know, or are able to provide more information. What else would you do?
I hate to hear that. I mean, that's good feedback for us to have. I mean, kind of the role of a service coordinator is to, they may not have all the answers, but they should be getting back with folks to give them the information that they need. I mean, their job is to kind of be a jack of all trades, but, I mean, I hope we ever have a situation where a family leaves a meeting without some type of feedback, or I may not have the answer, but I will get back to you. I mean, that's an expectation to have. So I'm glad to know that. I'm glad to hear that you're telling me that that's an issue. That's good, it's something we can fix.
Just out of the blue, just happen to know somebody who knows somebody who had this. So, I already bypassed Montgomery County, and that's why I came to this one. But
Are you getting the information from the schools, like
we passed all this to the
Right.
schools,
No,
but
this,
they have.
I got this because I was on an Asperger's Facebook group,
Okay.
who then had a speaker from Goodwin who passed these out to us. So if I hadn't gone to an Asperger's support group, I would have known that this was going on.
Can I ask what school system?
Senegal.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll be a little more pushy. I'm the parent resource trainer for all three counties, but I actually live in Simmons. Okay, I'll get it out.
I mean, we just had an ER meeting last month, and I was asking these questions, and I asked them what they lived and what they do. And,
Okay.
Well, I will say that in support, we just had our MTR meeting as well at Springboro, and my son's 15, he's a freshman in high school, and so we're starting down this path. And they volunteered to contact the district we were talking about getting services, and they said they would get in contact with the county and get back with us at our IEP meeting. So it is working sometimes, or at least I hope we're starting down that path, we'll see how it goes. But they were aware that there are services and they're trying to help us along. We'll see.
Well, there's no school systems.
Right.
We can share that feedback with the schools. I know that Angela, Heather, and I do meet with the schools on a routine basis. I mean, I think we both sides recognize that there was a gap in connection, you know, and that we focused, that we believe this is important. And so I know we're making an effort. So,
Angela also gave, I have on my listserv all your special needs coordinated stuff from all the school systems in Warren County. They're already on my listserv to get what I send out to all the parents now. I need to work on that with the other counties.
Whether it's this or not, I don't know, but is there some type of little packet or write-up type thing that is sort of pre-done, similar to what you've done here, but a little bit more, yes, I'll look at it as a parent friendly, to be kind of attached to when you become traditional age, to give to the school districts, to the high schools. So when you go into your 14-year-old's IEP meeting, and they say, okay, you're eligible for transitional services, they check the box, that you're actually given a resource, manual type, stapled little thing that says handbook.
path.
Exactly,
Okay.
because
Okay.
I'm an educator, I have a special needs child since birth, he's had FSB's IEP, all kinds of stuff, but it falls through the cracks. I see it from both sides that falls through. Yes, as a teacher, you're overwhelmed with a lot of stuff, and as a parent, you're overwhelmed when you have a lot of stuff. But I see that I even supposedly halfway know a clue, supposedly, don't know about any of this.
I can answer that. We have identified that as a need. We don't have anything yet. Our goal is to put something together that will be available. It'll have information from, similar to what you're finding in these sessions,
Right.
that we can provide to you. And so,
Kind of like one of those little, stapled with a little blue cardboard cover
absolutely,
kind of
that
thing, and
is,
you open it
actually,
up,
I think
and
we talked about something similar to that just last night.
that's
in a
like a
meeting.
dozen pages long, and it kind of summarizes and maybe
Or on
has that
that too,
person's
you
name
know.
and information at the top of that, like yours, and says, here's this particular group, with the activities. I technically never ever been approached like for even Special Olympics. My kid probably could have done that whole life, not a single time in my entire life, and anyone said, hey, you know what? This is where you would go for that. Because if you're a special needs parent, like everybody is here, you're overwhelmed, especially if you're on your own, just being your own. You don't have the time anymore to go looking for that information.
Our goal is to be able to provide you with something like that.
Well, I
So
think
you don't
just
have to feel like
technology
you're
too,
falling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can go, he's really functional, we do a lot of stuff on our own, but I can just see that a lot of people would miss knowing how to those things.
Other parents have been our biggest resource, other parents.
Yes.
We have kind of gotten Special Olympics as we were invited by the team. It's been,
We
so
were
you network with other families as much as you can.
Right.
events on any kind of website or Facebook group, anywhere where you can get notification of things, when things like this, crops up?
I know that we post, Warren County does post those, any upcoming events or things like that on our Facebook page. We do that. And then if, and Carolyn's speaking with the family, but Carolyn, as far as distributing information from this point forward, is that you, families that come tonight are added to
Well,
the
when
listserv?
people come tonight, I either have you already in my listserv, or I'm gonna put you on my listserv, and I will send out the questions from tonight. And if you want me, I will try to get a copy of the,
Can I put one thing on the paper that you gave out to the schools and has your dates? I received it as a one-sided, I assume that's the way it is. It would be a two-sided with just a little short paragraph about what each of those things actually mean. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sorry.
You know, because I get, okay, developmental disability services for employment first. I'm like, I have no idea what employment first is. I have no idea if I should go to that. If
well,
mine is
it's
now.
essentially for save the date, and I know,
I mean, just like, what is, because I mean, like, well, should I go to that or not? I have no idea.
okay, well, the next one's gonna be on social security, so
Right.
we're talking about as a
Social Security.
Yes.
I just, just from a no clue kind of person.
We are videotaping each session as well, so we will link it to our Facebook page and you'll be able to watch it through YouTube. So if you miss one or if you want to go back, because there's a lot of information, you'll be able to watch them. But I believe there'll also be some email blasts with like I think this time we sent one out, that just had a little paragraph about what was going to be presented tonight. So once you're added on that list, you should be able to get those as they, as we send out the reminders.
Any more questions? Because I have some, I forgot to hand out earlier. Employment first, it's about getting the kids out into the community, to get community employment, and it's a state initiative. I have forms that for the kids, they're to say the same thing, one's for female, one's for male, and it just gives you the process and how to seek employment with the transitioning group. I will put them out back if anyone wants these. There's a
So it's
website.
just information or it's an actual application?
It's not an application, it's just telling you the process of how to look for employment. It's actually the first meeting we had on employment first. This explains it somewhat. Correct, Mark?
Yes.
Yeah, it's on here, it's on here. It's on here.
You guys can just go to the website, they're there.
Well, but this is kind of a lower language, you can use it with your young adult that's going through transition, so. I'll put them out there, so.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And are we done? Any other questions? Okay, and I would like the evaluations back out on the table where you signed in, please. I would appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for coming.